Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. Today we're doing my April reading wrap up. I read 18 books this month, which if you know me, you know that that's not super crazy, but also it felt super crazy because I was finishing my job, finishing grad school, and it just felt like a lot. But I did read a lot of good books, some bad books, only one 5-star. It ended up being the last book I read of the month, which honestly is the perfect way to wrap it up. If you're new here, my name is Shreya. I make book videos. I would love it if you could hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, and let's get started. Alright, so I had about 1 million library books that I read this month, but unfortunately they were all overdue, so I had to return them. So I'm going to cut to the portion of the video where we're talking about my library books. So if I look very different for a second, that's why. The first book that I read amongst this great pile is Pack Up the Moon by Krista Higgins. I have heard that this is like a super sad book, and I love sad books, like make me cry. So that's why I picked it up. First of all, this book is pretty long. It's like 400 pages, but it's big and it felt so long. I wanted this book to be over from the minute that I started it. So this book is about a husband and a wife, and the wife dies of an illness, and she writes her husband a letter for him to open every single month for a year after she dies, and it's about him overcoming grief and just going through grief and moving on. And I just feel like this book could have been done a lot better. It was boring after the first couple of chapters where we see the setup of the book. It is just repetitive, and I didn't think that the language was that profound, and there wasn't really a lot that I enjoyed about this book. I didn't like the way that she moved through with timelines. I didn't really love a ton of this, and as somebody that loves sad books and automatically will probably rate a sad book higher just because that's what I love, there wasn't a ton for me to love about this book, and I actually ended up giving it a 2 stars, which is extremely low for me. I didn't give it a 1 because I really enjoyed the last like 30-ish pages. That got me in my feels. If you're looking for a sad book, I would not recommend this one, but I have heard it was really sad, so I automatically put it on my list. I'm glad that I got to it, but it was not good. Okay, next I have another book that was on my TBR for a long time, and that is Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. This one won an award, and it's just beautiful. Like, I had no idea what this was about. I just knew it was young adult, and the cover is absolutely gorgeous. I was really taken by surprise with this book. This was not anything that I thought it was going to be about. It is a coming of age story between 2 boys, Aristotle and Dante. They become each other's best friends. They go through a lot of growing up together and just experiencing what it is like to be in the same culture, to look a little bit different from each other, and just the different ways that it's received. And I really did enjoy this book. I thought it was very profound. I wish I found it when I was a young adult, but I just put this off for a couple of years, and you know what, I really did enjoy this. I gave this one 4 stars. I don't know if I'm gonna read the second one, but I would say if you're looking for a wholesome coming of age story about 2 boys, this one is really good. I thought that the layout was really good, the writing was really good, especially like if I was younger, I would have thought that this was like the best writing in the world. I love the questions that these characters ponder in this book, and I thought that it gave a lot of perspective to the coming of age story in a different perspective than we usually see. So I really enjoyed this book. I can see why it won awards. Simple truth written really elegantly. So 4 stars, highly recommend. Okay, next I read another classic that's been on my TBR forever, and it is Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. I'm sure you've heard of this, like everyone's heard of it. I saw on Goodreads that my best friend's mom read this 11 years ago, and it really was like, whoa, I have put this off for so long. This book is about a married couple, and the girl goes missing, and everyone thinks it is the guy, and the guy is trying to prove that it wasn't him, and you go through this like crazy story. It's a mystery, but also so much more than that. It really explores the depth of this one relationship and how toxic it is. It's worth the length that they're willing to go to get each other back in this relationship. So I definitely would recommend it. I don't think the writing was anything absolutely spectacular. I was upset by the ending. I didn't realize that the ending was going to be the way that it did. I thought that it was going to end on a much more definitive note and that we would get a lot more answers in the end than we actually did, and what happened in the end didn't quite satisfy me. However, I will say the writing really felt nostalgic to me. It felt like something that was written a little while ago, which it was, and I think that if you're just really into reading and just classics and something that's been around forever, this is a really good way to go. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars just because the writing didn't quite hit the 4 for me, but I did really enjoy the read and I was like in it and I wanted to know what happened. I was just really disappointed by the end. Okay, next we had my only DNF of the month. I put this book on hold for my library so long ago. I watched numerous videos and podcasts about how this was a horrible movie and B horrible book, but I've gotten so into the lore that I checked this book out. I got 1 chapter in and DNF'd it, and that is Argyle by Elle Conway. I haven't watched the movie. I don't think I plan to. I genuinely just think that the writing in this is so boring, and I did flip through it and read some of it and none of it was calling my name, and I just am going to return this and pass it on to the next person. I don't think that this story is worth it. I think that if you look into the Argyle lore and what is happening with this whole movie and like the author, all of this stuff, I think that it is fascinating and interesting but not quite worth the read, so that's why I DNF'd it. I was in my library and I saw this book and I had to check it out. It's called Call Me Athena, A Girl from Detroit. I have never heard of this book. Let me know if you have. It is a giant book, but it's all written in verse. Like, it's literally all poetry. It's based on a true story. The author is writing about her grandparents, I'm pretty sure. It takes place in 1930 Detroit, and it explores what it's like for an immigrant family. They're coming over from Greece. What it's like and what it was like to come over in the early 1900s and work in Detroit. Kind of how tumultuous that was, how hopeful it was also at the same time. And then it explores several generations later where there's still issues and it's still tumultuous, and it is just beautiful. I think it's really realistic yet lyrical and hopeful, and I think it's super romantic too, and it follows the great granddaughter, I believe, of one of the characters in here, and she finds letters and it instantly transports her back to that time, and we just get to follow generations of the same family, which ends up being a true story that she wrote about her family. And I'm from Detroit, that's why I got this book, and I loved it. I gave it a 4.5 stars. I think if you see it, you should check it out. I haven't heard anything about it, but it is really beautiful, and I think that even if you don't have a connection to the area, you would really enjoy it. And even though it's a giant book, it's all written in verse, so it didn't take me that long to read. Okay, next I read The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. I have an entire video on my channel dedicated to this book. I'll link it down below. It's called Am I Too Dumb to Read Classic Literature? I wanted to see if I still could do it, if I still had it in me. You're gonna have to watch to find out. Overall, I did really enjoy this book. I have been thinking about it a lot. I said in my video that I didn't know what my star rating would be, and I have settled on a 4 stars. However, I do think because it is a classic that I really liked that has so many themes in it, it's just a little bit different than your everyday 4 stars because I could still write essays about this book, but it wasn't like something that I am gonna take to the grave with me. But really good 4 stars. Go check out that video if you want to know more. Okay, next I read The Graham Effect by Elle Kennedy. First of all, this is such a fun cover. I've only read The Deal by Elle Kennedy. That genre is just not something that I love reading. Like, again, I want to read something that's gonna make me feel something and cry, but I saw this at my library and I decided to give it a whirl, and I'm so glad I did because this follows the daughter of the love interest in The Deal. So that's the book that I have read by her. It's just so good. She plays hockey, the love interest plays hockey, and it's just so college and stupid and just perfect. I was laughing the entire time. I was giggling the entire time, and it was kind of like a guilty pleasure. However, it was just written so well and like so stupid to the point that it was good. Like, not like stupid, but like it felt like I was watching interactions of friends in college. Like, she writes the characters so well, so realistic, and there were so many twists and turns in this book that I wasn't seeing coming, and because I didn't see it coming, it just made me love it even more. So I honestly at one point was like, is this a 5-star? But then I like took a step back and realized it's not. It's a 4.5, which is the highest something like this is ever gonna get from me. It's really good, and I really recommend that you go read The Graham Effect, because I think I might have liked this better than The Deal, and I really thoroughly enjoyed The Deal, but it's definitely something that I needed when I read it. And I think that whenever I need like a palate cleanser or something a little less serious, I'm gonna go for one of Elle Kennedy's books, because they are just so good, and I was eating it up the entire time. I was laughing the whole time. It was ridiculous. I looked psychotic. Okay, next I read Yoke by Mary H.K. Choi. First of all, look at these sprayed edges, like the hands. Be real. It's amazing. So I read this book because I heard that it was a sad book about sisterly connection, and I'm a sucker for a sad book, and I have a sister, so hey, I decided I would read it. This is about two sisters, and one of them gets cancer, and the sisters don't really have the best relationship. They were always fighting when they were growing up. There's just kind of like a rift there between them. When she gets her diagnosis, the sisters come together and they face a lot of issues in their past, and they take on their parents together, and it's just kind of exploring that relationship. It wasn't giving everything that I wanted it to give, however, it was so funny. Like, it made me laugh at a lot of times. With the relationships that we were exploring in here were really like funny to me, just like the dialogue. I thought that the author was really talented at the dialogue. However, there was a key emotional element of this story missing for me. Like, I wanted to connect to the characters so badly, and something was preventing me from being able to do that. I don't know what it was, but there were so many aspects in the middle of the story and the meat of the story that I was really enjoying, but I also didn't love the ending. Again, it wasn't definitive enough for me. I just needed more, and I did actually end up giving this a 3.75 stars. Okay, next I read The Reappearance of Rachel Price by Holly Jackson. This was a new release. I think I read it like the day it came out. I do not mesh with Holly Jackson's writing because I have the Good Girl's Guide to Murder trilogy. That's the other book that I've read by her. I have not read Five Survive, and I didn't love those books, okay? I have many qualms with those books, but I decided to give her another chance with this new book, and I like don't even know really what I read. Like, it took me a full day to process it. The story was just crazy. Like, what was going on? Like, it was like this the whole time I was reading it. Also, the thing that I think is a common thread between the mysteries in Holly Jackson's writing is that there's always this particular element that feels very predictable to me, and it happened again in this book, but it was entertaining enough that I still wanted to keep going. Also, she has so much unnecessary writing in her book that I noticed that she goes over the top with details that do not matter, and that really irritates me, because when I'm reading a fun little YA mystery, like, that's all I want it to be. Like, I don't need to know every single detail, and that to me made it a little bit boring of a book. If this book would have been 100 pages shorter, I think I would have given this a higher rating. I ended up giving this a 3 stars. I did like the ending. I thought the conclusion was really good, but I thought that the way that we got there could have been way shorter and was a little convoluted. Okay, next I read The Boy Who Steals Houses, The Girl Who Steals His Heart. I really wanted to read this book for the longest time. I'm so happy when I was able to check it out from the library. I haven't heard a ton about this book, but it is about a boy who is homeless, and he breaks into houses so he can be there for a couple of nights and have a warm place to stay, and then he leaves and finds another house so he's never caught, and it's a very hard life. He is an orphan, and you get to see all of his struggles with that, and he also has a brother, and it's super hard because he feels like he has to take care of his brother, but his brother does not always listen to him, and so you get to see that relationship. One day he breaks into a house, and there's a lot of siblings in the house, and they all believe that he is their sibling's friend. So we get to stay in the house for a little bit, and you just kind of see him opening up and wishing for a family and really wanting something that he is not able to have, and it is heartbreaking, and just seeing the evolution and the growth of this character is heartbreaking and heartwarming, and I gave this a 4 stars. I loved this book. I thought it was really good, and I'm really glad I read this. And if you're looking for a heartwarming read that's like kind of sad but it'll pull at your heartstrings and it's super hopeful, I really recommend this book. It was so cute and sweet and I loved it. Okay, next I read Instructions for Dancing by Nicola Yoon, and this is actually the same author that wrote another popular book, which is The Sun Is Also a Star, which is on my TBR. I checked this out because I was at the library and I saw it and I was like, whoa, it's super cute. I really enjoyed this book. This book is about Evie, and her parents got a divorce. She doesn't believe in love anymore. She's very cynical about it. She thinks that everybody that she meets is gonna just break up with her and that it's just not worth it falling in love. Well, she meets this random lady one day that instills in her magical powers where every single time she sees 2 people kiss, she sees their entire relationship plays out, and inevitably they usually end up breaking up, and it confirms her belief that there is no such thing as true love in the world. And you see her evolution and her just going through her own relationship but trying to protect herself, and I think for a YA book it is pretty dang deep, and I gave this a 4.25 stars because I thought that for a short little book the writing was profound, there was a great lesson in the end, and I really enjoyed it, and I think it was just super cute, and I haven't heard enough about this, so definitely go read it. Okay, the last of my library books, and in this section is Confess by Colleen Hoover. Okay, this is one of the only books left on my Coho backlist, and Coho just like not my favorite author. She used to be. She got me back into writing, but I am just so evolved from that I can't even like read a book by her. But I saw this and I got it, and it was literally just, it was so stupid. I did give it a 3 stars because it was so entertaining to read. I read it in one sitting, but it's so cringy. The conversations that happen are just so creepy. Like, there's just something about Coho's writing that rubs me so wrong, but it only rubbed me the wrong way the second time I read it, and years after, when I was a more mature reader, I didn't catch it the first time. But basically it's about a girl and she gets a job at this weird art studio where people are writing confessions, and the artist draws paintings based on the confessions, and the story goes from there, and it's just everything that you would expect in a Coho book. Plot twist, crazy, weird, fast-paced, cringy writing. Gave it a 3 stars. I just wouldn't recommend Coho, honestly, unless you like really can't get into a book and you need something to pick you up, then you can read Coho. I just have wanted to read this for a very long time, picked it up. It was 3 stars. Wouldn't recommend. So now let's talk about the books that I own or I read on my Kindle. So the first one is The Bodyguard by Catherine Center. I haven't read anything by Catherine Center, but I know Haley Pham loves her. So I read this. It's on Kindle Unlimited, and I really enjoyed this book. I had a really fun time. I was laughing. So basically the premise is the girl is the guy's bodyguard. She is from a company that does security, and he is a famous person, and he has to move back for a little bit to deal with his mom's health issues. So she goes and becomes his bodyguard, and it's kind of like Grumpy Sunshine. He doesn't want her to be her bodyguard, and they end up falling in love. And I thought it was super cute, super easy and fast to read. It was so funny. Like, I think a rom-com. When I read that book, I had never read a book where I was like, oh, this is a rom-com. This is a rom-com, because the romance was there, but the comedy was so good. But I ended up giving this one a 3.5 stars because I probably am gonna end up forgetting about it, but when I think of the book, I just remember how funny it was to read. If you're looking for a cute, lighthearted rom-com, I would recommend this one. Next, I read the worst book that I've read of the month, possibly the year, and that is God of Malice by Rena Kent. Please don't let Larry Reed see that I gave this 1 star, because I feel like she would be very upset at me. But I can do a whole video on dark romance if you want me to, because I read quite a bit this year and none of them have hit. So it's probably a me issue. Like, I'm probably the problem. But this was our book club pick of the month, so that's why we read it, and it's gonna be so fun to have the book club meeting because we all kind of hated it, but it was just too much. It was so painful to read and to get through, and I guess if you know that it's dark romance going into it, it wouldn't be as bad, and I knew it was dark romance going into it. Something about this was not good to me. Like, I didn't like the writing, I didn't like the plot of what was happening, I didn't like the smut scenes. Like, it just made me so uncomfortable, and I guess that that's the point, but it just wasn't for me. I am willing to give God of Fury a chance, which is like the fourth one, because I know that is Larry's favorite ever. She has a tattoo for it, but oh my god, this is not good. If you haven't read dark romance before, do not start with this one, and it just wasn't good. It wasn't worth the read, and it was too long for what it was, so I gave that one a 1 star. Okay, next I read one of my most anticipated releases of the entire year, and that was Taming 7 by Chloe Walsh. Look at how floppy these books are, literally so good. So this is part of the Boys of Tommen series, where we have Binding and Keeping 13, Saving and Redeeming 6. All of those books in the series were 5-star for me, like one of my favorite series in the entire world. This one is Claire and Gibbs's story, and if you read the series, you know that we get so many breadcrumbs of them throughout the series, and so I was so excited, and I think so many people were so excited for this book. I just left feeling so disappointed, and it just hurts my heart so much because I thought this was gonna be a 5-star read, and unfortunately it wasn't. This book is the shortest book in the series, clocking in at just a little over 400 pages, and I know that might seem like an average book, especially with the font being so tiny, but it is a short book. I got to the 200 page mark and I realized that nothing had happened. I was actually gonna film a reading vlog, but nothing was happening for the whole first half of the book. That I like literally had no content and no thoughts, so nothing was happening. And then when things finally started to happen, like, it got a little more interesting, and it was still the same characters that I know and loved, and getting to see the other characters like really made my heart smile. So I still gave this one a 4 stars because in the first 200 pages nothing happened. I just couldn't give it a 5 star. Also, the way that this one concluded I didn't like. I think there is going to be another one that is Claire and Gibbsy, and I feel like I'm gonna love that one a little bit more because the background that we got really wasn't that much background, and also there was just one plot line, and I really felt like there should have been more conversations between more people to really make the story make sense and for the characters to make amends, and it just wasn't hitting. It felt like a second draft of the book, and she really needed to go and add a couple more things, definitely tweak the first 200 pages. But I love the characters. I gave it 4 stars. These characters have such a special place in my heart. I just like know that she could have done better, so that's why it wasn't 5. Okay, next I finally read the second book in the Infernal Devices series. It's The Clockwork Prince. I read the first one back in January, didn't really love it. I gave it 3 stars, but I own the book, so I have to read it, and I had a little lull, so I was like, okay, let me just pick it up and give it another chance. I did like it better than the first book. I really did. However, it's just something about this writing that is so boring to me, and I don't know if it's because I'm older and I've matured more, because The City of Bones, The Mortal Instruments, was one of my favorite series ever as a child. Like, literally loved that series with my whole heart. I made my parents go and take me to see City of Bones in theaters. That's how much I loved it. But something about this series isn't really hitting for me. It is a Victorian fantasy set in England, which just sounds super amazing and wonderful. I do like the characters. I think that I was very bored the first half of the book, and then the second half it really started picking up. The characters started doing more, and I was like really invested, but I just think that something about it doesn't hit for me, and I think it might have if I was 12, but just being a little older didn't hit for me as hard. I have very high hopes. I'm very hopeful for the last book, which is Clockwork Princess, I believe. I know a lot of people love that book. It's one of their favorites of all time. It is a series that is slowly getting better. I know that Infernal Devices is some people's people's favorite series in the entire world. I don't get it, but I am willing to give it a chance, and it ended on a cliffhanger that I am very interested. I finished this book like a week and a half ago, and I'm still thinking about the cliffhanger. So definitely want to read Clockwork Princess sometime in May. Okay, next I read Caught Up by Liz Tomford. This is the third book in the Windy City series. My best friend loves the series so much, so it was on my list, and then I finally decided to read it, and I'm so glad I did. The second book in the series, I feel like if you're a reader, you know and you love it because Ryan Shea is the ultimate book boyfriend. This book is about Kai and Miller. Kai is a baseball player. He has a son. He's a single dad, and he needs a babysitter, and his coach's daughter is the love interest Miller, and she is just taking some time off in her cooking career, and she is kind of in a slump in her career, so she decides to babysit this guy's son because her dad asked her to, and then kind of hit it off from there. If you are a Grumpy Sunshine lover, you will love this. If you are an acts of service lover, you will love this. I am an acts of service girly, so I loved this book. I ate her up. It was so good. I do think that Ryan Shea is just better, in my opinion. I would rather date Ryan Shea. So this book got a 4.25, so very good. It's so good. I'm like thinking about it even now, like just so good. The chemistry between them is so good, and I'm learning that I like the single dad romance, which is so funny because like if you know me, you know that I'm just not like a children person. But this book is really good. If you like the Windy City series, I don't think you're going to be disappointed by this, and you get breadcrumbs of the other characters. Next, I read Wild Love by Elsie Silver, and I was not going to read this book. It was not on my radar, not on my list. I loved the Chestnut Spring series. I thought that was a really good one, but this was on Kindle Unlimited, and I decided to give it a go, and oh my gosh, I am so glad I did. I almost gave this 5 stars, guys. I almost give a romance book 5 stars, which if you know me, you know that I don't really give romance books 5 stars just because it's just not my favorite genre. But this is really good. This is not Chestnut Springs, but the characters are related to some of the characters. So you still get like a little bit of breadcrumbs, which I just absolutely adore. This follows Ford, who is a billionaire, and Rosie, and their childhood friends. Ford is best friends with Rosie's older brother, her brother's best friend, and she comes back to their hometown, and also Ford finds out that he has a daughter that he literally never knew about. So you're seeing throughout the book his relationship with this girl that shows up on his front step saying that she is his daughter, and then he's kind of always been in love with Rosie, which I love that. And again, if you like acts of service, you will absolutely adore this book. Oh my god. Oh my god. The acts of service were insane in this book. Made my heart melt. I was literally smiling like an idiot the entire time I was reading this. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna read the rest of the books in this series. I don't know what Elsie Silver put in this, but this is my second favorite book by her. The only book that I liked better, which I gave 5 stars, was Heartless. Again, it is Single Dad and Nanny. But if you want a really sweet, charming romance, billionaire, the guy's been in love with the girl forever, she is kind of battling things in her career, which I think is so relatable. Like the way that she talked about her career, the way that that storyline kind of progresses through the book, so relatable, and there's just a lot going on. It's not just a romance, and so 4.5 stars. It was almost a 5 stars, but 4.5. And then the last book that I read this month ended up being a 5-star read. I'm so happy about it. Like, oh my god, oh my god. It is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. I'm still cheesing from this book. So good. When I got this, I was like, I'm not gonna read it until I'm in a romance mood, maybe by the pool or something. But I just had the itch. I just wanted to read it. It is a pretty long book. It's about 400 pages, and I don't know what this girl put in her books. It was addicting. Like, I wanted to take my time and savor it, but I just couldn't because it was so good. I was laughing, and the chemistry between these two characters is undeniable. It's so good. So this follows Emma and Justin. They find each other on a Reddit thread because they both have this thing where they date someone and it doesn't work out, and when they break up with that person, the other person finds their soulmate right away. So it was kind of a curse, and they decide to break it. They're going to date each other, and then when they break up, the next person will be their soulmate. So we have that going on with the romance. Justin is handling battles with his mom, going to prison, and he has to adopt his siblings. And Emma is also going through problems with her mom. Her mom was very, very abusive to her, and her mom kind of shows up out of nowhere in the beginning of this book, so she is dealing with her mom. They both have issues that they're dealing with while they're dating each other and trying to break this curse. They inevitably end up falling in love, and you get to see what that looks like. And Emma is a travel nurse, so she knows that she is on borrowed time. The thing that really sticks out to me about this book is just like the mundane things that Abby would write about, or just like the different conversations that they would have, the activities that they would do, and how they would be doing the most mundane thing, like going to a grocery store, and it was still so fun and interesting to read about, and just made me smile like an idiot into this book, and it was phenomenal. My favorite Abby book ever. Again, there were acts of service in this, and just the things that they would do for each other, battling their own anxieties, but still showing each other that they cared about each other, made my heart melt. And there was not a single negative thing that I could say about this. Every single page had my attention, which is super rare nowadays, and it was a perfect book inside and out. It's one of my favorite books I've read all year, honestly, and I don't see anything changing that anytime soon. Please go read it. I will say it does hit harder if you read part of your world and you are truly first, because you get to see other characters in those books interact with each other in like little subtle ways, and it just makes me so happy. And I think that Abby Jimenez is just one of my favorite authors ever. I will adore and cherish this book forever. Please go read it. Alright everybody, that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.